Hi, Ola. Turns out I'm an expert after all. Yesterday I made a small dance video, which I haven't done. With small, I mean it was a short, which I haven't done in a while. And I got a little bit frustrated with trying to find titles with ChatGPT and whatnot. And I started thinking about this. This is my 26th dance video. And you might have noticed that I took, or still actually am taking a little bit of break from posting so regularly. And this gave me some time to think about certain things. Mostly that I really am somebody who loves to move and loves to be moved and to move others as a result. But I would love to take you on a journey and to explain to you why I am an expert after all and what I'm an expert in. So let's start. When it comes to movement, that somehow is interlinked very closely for me with performance and theater and improvisation. That started very early in my life. When I was around 14 years old, I started aerobics, that was in at the time, and modern dance, and I loved it. I was already playing theater that I started with 10 years old because it was part of our curriculum at school. And yes, so I was doing that for a while. And when it comes to dance, when we stay with dance, so this is when I was 14 and I'm 53 now, so do the maths. It's been a long time of moving and dancing because I didn't stop there. I always loved dance, and I just want to make very clear I'm not just someone who's all of a sudden deciding to dance and turning on the camera. I have dived into a lot of different approaches. It was always the ones that were a little bit freer, although I have to say that I still love modern dance as well as jazz dance. I did that for a while when I was doing theater and education in Heidelberg. We had acrobatics as well, but we also had dance classes, which I loved. I think I got introduced to Laban there, and then I discovered 5 Rhythms by Gabriel Roth that I loved very much. When I lived in Hamburg, I was discovering soul motion. I was doing other dance lessons that I don't quite remember the names of. And then later on, when I lived in England, I delve a little bit more into the 6 Viewpoints that were both good for dance as well as for theater. And I was doing more Laban dance because a friend of mine was actually teaching Laban dance. And did I actually mention soul motion? So I'm going to throw different approaches at you just to make sure you actually get that my body is used to movement and kind of knows what it's doing. So that's the specific dance piece. And for me, dance and theater became very much interlinked because I specifically became very interested in the more physical theater approaches. When I had my A-levels, I didn't know what to do because I loved both. I loved everything art, specifically theater, writing. Writing I had started with 18, and psychology. And so I found a university that was offering as a main subject, you could choose between literature, theater and art, and then you could have psychology and pedagogy. And I did that for a year, and I don't want to go too deeply into this, but I changed over to social work because kind of I didn't have a choice, but it turned out to be the best choice for me, to be honest. And within the social work, there was a theater department, so I happened to stumble across improvisation. That was in my 20s, and I learned to love everything improvisation, and I loved Grotowski. Grotowski was also a specific, more physical theater approach. I then dove into those different approaches. I did some workshops with Keith Johnston, who was very known for improvisation in theater sports, and he was brilliant. That was when I was still living in Germany. And so I told you, yes, and after that, when I was working as a social worker for a year, I did the theater and education thing, and there I discovered Lecoq. That was another very specific approach of theater, and I loved it. It had this idea that we are being moved by what our environment and then express ourselves. It was very instinct-based, and so what did I do? I actually moved to London to do the School of Physical Theatre. It was fantastic. I loved it. We, of course, also did, apart from movement, we did acrobatics. We also did dance, because it was, and we worked with masks a lot, because masks are great for really learning how to move from the body, how to trust your body, and how to create from instinct. Ron had a specific additional program where you could learn how to create your own show. So I did that. I wrote and created my own show with him that was called Circus of Emotions. That was beginning, I was just 30 at the time, and I loved it so much that I did another show with him that was called Mind the Gap. And it was, I had dance in there, I had a lot of movement. It was both solo shows. I was like for 1.5 hours on my own on the stage, and there were different characters. So all those mixtures I'm loving now were already in that space, the writing, the dancing, the movement, the performing. So then after that I moved to Hamburg, and I learned how to coach. And I dove more into that side of things. I had a coaching training. I started coaching people, business people who wanted to learn to express themselves more, present themselves more authentically. So I did do that and had a lot of fun. And as I said, psychology was always also a passion of mine. So I dove deeply into, I don't know, was it in my 40s, Brené Brown's work. I read all her books. I'm jumping a little bit with you all over the place, but I just want to make sure you understand how much lived experience, continuous growing, and expertise is actually there in both those areas, in creative expression as well as in coaching and psychology and pedagogy. And so I moved to Cornwall after I had been living in Hamburg. And this was another creative venture for me. I started doing more films. I made art films with beautiful other artists and people, but we also had a show that I directed at the time, and where each of one of us, we were 4 women, were writing our own part, and we took it actually to Edinburgh for the French. But the art films, I was late 30s, then beginning of 40s, I was editing all the films myself. I taught myself how to edit. I loved it. We happened to do a lot of those films. You can all find them on my YouTube channel if you take some endeavor. I did all sorts of things, little acted ones, art films, performance art films, any of those things. Look up Cassandra, for example, was a beautiful one, and many other ones. And so also my more specific healing journey started also in Cornwall, because that was around 2012, I suspect. Yes, no, I know. Because my autoimmune thing I was diagnosed with got worse, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I was looking more into this at that time, and creativity became my backbone. I for a little while stopped, but I never stopped really. I never gave up on that. It was too important to me. So in that time also I learned solo improvisation with Andrew Moorish in a workshop, and which was fantastic, also based on movement, and it enabled me at the time to go to an open stage. That was in St. Ives, and because I wanted to perform again continuously, and I would go each week for about 2 or 3 years continuously and would perform an improvisation. And in that time as well, I'm showing off relentlessly, but that's what this is about. I came and did an intensive summer training with a very famous company, and I'm having a blackout now. I will put it in the description. And it was the Six Viewpoints, and that was fantastic. I loved it, and the Six Viewpoints are also very much movement-based. I don't want to really explain all those approaches to you now. I think that's probably getting too much. And so after that, yes, and then that friend who was also teaching Laban, she founded a company, Fool's Theater, and we were musicians and performers, and we were also improvising to music and without music, and we were doing that at least for a year. So that was another thing that I was doing. I moved to Galway after that, and that was the phase when also the pandemic hit and such things. I started my podcast. Oh, I've forgotten that I started writing stories while I was in Cornwall, and I actually published a book that was in German with the stories. And I had an ebook with the English version of the stories. And in Galway, I started the podcast that I recorded the stories with, and I just have new things that I recorded. You can listen to every Sunday on my podcast. So in Galway as well, I started with not only, no, it's not true. When I was already in Cornwall, I started illustrating my stories and got more into this thing. I have to say that I grew up with an artistic mother. She's an artist, she paints. And I did some of her courses she was giving as a teenager a few times, but I developed my completely own style. So when the pandemic hit, I did a course with Shiloh Sophia, was doing a huge acrylic painting, which was a lot of fun, but my living circumstances weren't like that I could continue, like there's not enough space. And this is how I developed my particular drawing I'm doing now, and I'm doing this since several years now too. But that's maybe the shortest endeavor, but you can see I've been creating since I was a kid. And I have been doing a lot of improvisation, a lot of theater and dance and all those things. And also I have in depth actually dove, I don't know. I have in depth actually studied psychology in many ways, shapes and forms. And to add to this, I joined Dr. Ramani's program, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, in 2022, and have been learning a lot through that. I'm still doing that. So I know anything and everything about what it means to silence yourself and to not express yourself creatively, and I know what it takes to express yourself more, and I'm a very seasoned, multifaceted artist, and I didn't just start yesterday to switch on the camera and talk into it, or switch on the camera and do a movement piece and edit it. So that's what I needed to say. This was on the longer side, and you might not be interested in this at all, but here it goes. I am an expert after all. Have a good day. Take good care. Bye-bye.